Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Charts with Dan. We are on Monday this week. That's because I am driving today to see the Super Mario Galaxy movie, so we're going to be using the dreaded estimates, but that's okay because the winner of the box office this past weekend was not in doubt. It was another big weekend for Project Hail Mary. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about a major milestone passed by Dhurandhar: The Revenge here at the domestic box office, and we're going to look at the month of March and see how it compared to last year and how we're doing so far at the 2026 box office. So a lot to get to today, and let's jump right into the box office top 10 from this past weekend. At number one was Project Hail Mary with a great 32% drop in weekend number two and a $54.5 million second weekend. It's now at $164.3 million. I don't care how big you open, a 32% drop is really good. And when you have a movie that opened as well as Project Hail Mary did and held that well, that is a good sign. It means that audiences are going to see it. It means that word of mouth is spreading. And I think that we're going to see it perform pretty well for a while to come. When we look at the biggest weekends this year, now these aren't opening weekends. These are all movies, all weekends in 2026. The opening of Project Hail Mary last weekend was the biggest weekend for any movie so far at $80.5 million. Then we had the opening weekend of Scream 7 at $63.6 million. And then, as you can see, the third best weekend this year was Project Hail Mary's second weekend at $54.5 million. Then we had the opening of Hoppers, the third weekend of Avatar: Fire and Ash, which was the first box office weekend of 2026. That was January 2nd through the 4th. So it was putting up $41.4 million in that third weekend. Then we have the opening of Wuthering Heights, the second weekend of Hoppers, which came in at $28.6 million. The opening of Goat, the fourth weekend of Avatar: Fire and Ash on January 9th. And then Zootopia 2 on that first weekend of the year, which made $19.3 million in its sixth week of release. So Project Hail Mary putting up the first and third best domestic weekends of the year. We're going to look at this worldwide later on in the show. This is also now the eighth highest grossing non-sequel this decade. So remember, these are movies that were released in the 2020s. I am defining non-sequel as a movie that is not part of a cinematic universe and with no previous movies starring the specific characters in that film. A lot of people have different definitions. This is how I'm choosing to define it. Barbie is at number one at $636.2 million, and this is total domestic gross, by the way. A Minecraft movie is in second place at $424 million. Then we have Oppenheimer, Sinners, and F1 the movie rounding out the top five. Sound of Freedom is in fifth place at $109.6 million. Remember that one from a few summers ago? Then we have Taylor Swift, The Eras Tour at $180.7, and Project Hail Mary right now is the eighth highest grossing non-sequel of the decade, but it's got a lot of room to grow. It's at $164.3 million. By the end of the week, it should be well ahead of F1 the movie, and then we'll see how it settles out from there. Elemental and Weapons round out that top 10. Project Hail Mary is now officially Ryan Gosling's second highest grossing domestic film at $164.3 million. That puts it ahead of La La Land, Remember the Titans, and The Fall Guy. I think it was at number 8 last week, so it's really jumped up this list, and that's where it's going to stay. As good as it is, I don't think it's going to bank another a little less than $500 million, but it's going to be squarely in the rankings as his second best film domestically. So Project Hail Mary continuing to perform very well. In second place is another movie that's performing very well, Hoppers, which dropped 31% in its fourth weekend and brought in another $12.2 million estimated for the past weekend. An estimated domestic total right now of $138.5 million. And when we look at where it ranks as far as the other Pixar films, it is now above The Good Dinosaur. It's about $15 million behind Cars 3, and that would basically put it above Elemental and A Bug's Life. So by next week, depending on how well it does in the face of the Super Mario Galaxy movie, we could see Hoppers move past Elemental, get up into A Bug's Life territory, and then we'll see if it has the legs to get into that $200 million range. So it's performing well. It didn't have the most incredible opening of all time, but it's holding well in the marketplace. I think it is the choice for families right now, but they may abandon it for Mario and company. In third place, as of these estimates, now these are all pretty close, so these movies could shift a little bit. We have They Will Kill You opening to $5 million. Not a very impressive opening. I think it probably didn't help that it opened 2 weeks after a very similar film in Ready or Not, Here I Come. Dhurandhar The Revenge comes in fourth place. It made $4.7 million in its second weekend with a 53% drop, which is actually exceptional. Films from India often drop 70, 80+% in their second weekends. This one is holding like an average Hollywood film here in the domestic marketplace, which is very rare. And Dhurandhar The Revenge is now actually the highest grossing film ever from India here at the domestic box office at $22.7 million. It passes Bahubali 2, The Conclusion, which I think has had that record for almost 10 years. The first Dhurandhar film is in third place, followed by Kalki 2898 AD and Patan. Javan, RRR, Animal, Pushpa the Rule Part 2, and Dangal round out the top 10. Dangal was at one time the #1 grossing Indian release ever here in the domestic marketplace 10 years ago. So the fact that it went from #1 to #10 in this last decade just goes to show you, and really in the last 5 years, just goes to show you how much penetration we've seen from Indian films here in the domestic marketplace. In fifth place was Reminders of Him, which dropped 41% in its third week at $4.7 million. Again, that may switch places with Dhurandhar one way or the other. In sixth place, we had Ready or Not, Here I Come, which dropped 56%. Not a terrible drop, but it didn't have a very great opening. It made an estimated $4 million for a $16.2 million domestic total. Scream 7 dropped 40% in its fifth week to bring in $2.6 million. And when we look at the Scream franchise adjusted for inflation, Scream 7 now becomes the fourth highest grossing film of all time in the franchise. It has passed Scream 6 on these inflation adjusted figures, but that's where it's going to stay. It's not going to get up to the $182.6 million adjusted that Scream 3 made. So Scream 7, kind of the best Scream film box office wise, that's not part of that initial trilogy. GOAT in its seventh week dropped 36%, made another $2.2 million, and has now passed the $100 million mark domestically. Undertone dropped 45% in its third weekend to bring in $1.6 million, and opening in 10th place was Forbidden Fruits, which made $1.17 million. Dropping out of the top 10 this week, we have the Pout Pout Fish, which was in the top 10 for just 1 week, and then the special event, the Met Opera Tristan und Isolde, which is also out after 1 week. And looking at the biggest theater count changes this past weekend, Undertone led the way, not a huge number. It lost 718 theaters. It's still in 1,852. Wuthering Heights lost 378 theaters. Its run is almost at an end. It's in 223. And this is interesting to note because if you recall, Wuthering Heights and GOAT opened on the same weekend. However, GOAT lost 291 theaters. It's still in 2,246 theaters, so firmly in wide release, and it is going to healthily outgross Wuthering Heights. So it just goes to show you it's not just how you open, it's how you do past that opening weekend. Send Help lost the bulk of its remaining theaters, 275 of them. It's still in 125. And Reminders of Him lost a few theaters, 260. It's still in 3,181. We did not have a major release this past weekend. With the Super Mario Galaxy movie opening on Wednesday, we should look for a much steeper theater loss number on next week's show. Let's take a look at the 2026 box office versus the 2025 box office. And as has been the trend for the last month, we had a substantially improved box office this weekend versus the same weekend last year. It was up about 23.4%. That was when Jason Statham's A Working Man was #1. And we've got a nice little pattern going on here. Now, the thing to watch for this upcoming weekend is that the Super Mario Galaxy movie is opening, but the equivalent weekend last year was when a Minecraft movie had its huge opening weekend. So I don't think we're going to see as much of an improvement for this upcoming weekend versus the same weekend in 2025, but it'll be for a good reason. It's because there will be two movies, it would seem, all signs indicate that there will be two movies that performed exceptionally well on that first weekend of April. But we're off to a great start here in 2026, and as I mentioned later on in the show, we're going to look at the cumulative box office so far this year, as well as the market share for every studio. Let's turn our attention now to the international box office. That's all markets outside of the US and Canada. And Project Hail Mary remains number one. It actually dropped only 10.3% from its opening weekend internationally. It brought in $54.1 million. So that's a great number and a great sign that the international gross for this movie will also be strong. Dhurandhar the Revenge dropped 41.7%, brought in $27.1 million. Again, for a film from India, that is actually a very strong hold in weekend number two. Hoppers dropped 27.5% to bring in $24.8 million. Reminders of Him dropped 31.2% to bring in $4.9 million. And in fifth place was The Magic Faraway Tree, which brought in $4.64 million. This is a fantasy film adapted from the children's novel of the same name. It was written by Simon Farnaby, who also wrote the Paddington films, and this reflects a release in Australia and the UK. I don't think that there is a US release date for this film so far. When you take those international numbers, you combine them with our domestic numbers, we get our top 5 films worldwide, and Project Hail Mary is still number one, $108.6 million. That's a 22.9% worldwide drop from its opening weekend. Again, that's very strong. It's over $300 million globally as well. It's now the highest grossing Hollywood film of the year. Hoppers dropped 28.8% to bring in another $37 million. It's right behind Project Hail Mary at $297.5 million. Dhurandhar the Revenge brought in $31.9 million. It's at almost $150 million worldwide. Reminders of Him brought in $9.6 million, and They Will Kill You opened to $9 million worldwide. And as we did with the domestic side of things, let's look at the biggest worldwide weekend so far this year. So Avatar Fire and Ash actually put up the best weekend numbers, and it was the first weekend of the year. It brought in $171 million globally for the weekend of January 2nd. That's still the best weekend for any movie worldwide this year. Then we had the opening of Pegasus 3, which was the big Chinese release for Chinese New Year. It opened to $152.1 million for that Friday through Sunday window, although keep in mind the movie actually opened on Tuesday. But Project Hail Mary has now had the third and fourth best weekend of any movie around the world this year, with its $140.9 million opening and its $108.6 million second weekend. In fifth place was the opening of Scream 7. Then we have the opening of Hoppers. Avatar Fire and Ash, again bringing in $87.1 million on the second weekend of the year. Zootopia's performance bringing in $82 million worldwide on that January 2nd through 4th weekend. Then the opening of Wuthering Heights at $74.8 million, and Hopper's second weekend at $59.6 million. And Dhurandhar the Revenge is not just making noise here in the United States. Of course, it's making noise globally as well. These are the highest grossing Indian films worldwide, and the gross is expressed here in crore. Crore is a method in the Indian economy and the Indian box office where they reflect how many rupees have come in for a film. And the reason I'm expressing the highest grossing Indian films in crore is because the value of that in dollars has changed a lot over the last many years. So to express how much an Indian film has made worldwide solely in dollars would sort of misrepresent just how much it has made in Indian currency over the years. So this is reflected in crore. I could explain everything to you, but honestly, it's an explanation that I've had trouble with. So all I will tell you is that this is in Indian currency, which is expressed in crore. And I should also note that Indian box office data is notoriously difficult to track. There are often conflicting sources, and this reflects the data I have as of Sunday night. So Dhurandhar the Revenge, for example, may have a higher gross. That gross just was not available when I was prepping this video. Over the long term, I should be able to track this more consistently, but I always get people saying, well, wait a minute, this doesn't match the number I have with Indian box office data. Again, you just have to do the best you can. The highest grossing Indian film worldwide is still Dangal back in 2016, which brought in 2,084 crore. That's because it did well in China. It was, as I mentioned, the highest grossing Indian film here in the US. So it's still number one all time for Indian films around the globe. Then we have Bahubali 2, The Conclusion, Pushpa the Rule Part 2, the first Dhurandhar film, and RRR. But Dhurandhar the Revenge is really moving up this chart rapidly. It is now the sixth highest grossing Indian film of all time worldwide, with a lot of room for advancement. KGF Chapter 2, Javan, Kalki 2898 AD, and Pathan round out the top 10. So Dhurandhar the Revenge not just doing well here in the United States, but around the world, and especially, of course, in India. Let's turn our attention now to what I call some of our specialty charts, and we'll start with the per theater averages for this past weekend. Of course, some of these movies are late reporters, so if there are some adjustments to make, some major ones, I'll mention it on next week's show. But right now, the top per theater average for the past weekend goes to Fantasy Life, which brought in $39,000 in just one theater. Fantasy Life is the debut film from writer, director, and actor Matthew Scheer. Amanda Peet plays a woman who develops feelings for the man babysitting her kids, who is played by Scheer. In second place is a film called Our Hero Balthazar, which played also in just one theater and brought in a little over $33,000. Asa Butterfield plays a high school kid who travels across the country to confront another teenager, played by Jaden Martell, who he believes is going to become a school shooter, so not the most lightweight of comedies there. Project Hail Mary brought in $13,376 per theater in over 4,000 theaters, so also a good weekend for many theater owners around the country, not just the indie theater owners. Continental 25 in one theater brought in $6,683. This is a film from Romania that won the Silver Bear for Best Screenplay at last year's Berlin Film Festival. And rounding out the top five is Dhurandhar The Revenge. It was just off the top five per theater averages last weekend. It brought in $4,807 per theater in each of its 987 theaters. And when we look at the top per theater averages for 2026, Fantasy Life has the third best number. We'll see what the final number looks like later today when those numbers come out. But right now it comes in healthily behind Pillion, which brought in over $60,000 per theater, but ahead of Palestine 36, which was added to this chart last week. So we're starting to see some specialty movies back into theaters after that big rush of Oscar films. These are the top films in limited release, which I define as 1,000 theaters or fewer. Dhurandhar The Revenge leads the way with $4.7 million. Then we have the AI doc, or How I Became an Apocalyptimist. This is co-directed by the Oscar-winning director of the documentary film Navalny. It was actually playing at the Sundance Film Festival. I didn't get a chance to see it, but I heard that some people really liked it. The worst I heard on it was kind of mixed word of mouth. It made $650,000 in 786 theaters. In third place was the 40th anniversary re-release of Stand By Me, which brought in $450,000 in 624 theaters. In fourth place, in an unknown number of theaters, is the movie Bunny, which brought in $178,000. This is a Vietnamese thriller about love and obsession when a woman discovers that she has been seeing a married man. And in fifth place is Alpha, which is the latest film from Julia Ducournau. She really made a splash with Titan. This movie played at Cannes last year. It was a little bit more, well, I guess Titan was also divisive, but it wasn't as well received by its fans as Titan was. It brought in just over $120,000 in 218 theaters. So before we move on to how this year has looked so far, I want to take a look at our member poll from last week. As I mentioned, Project Hail Mary jumped into IMDb's top 250, and as of last week's show, there were 8 Hollywood films from this decade that were currently listed in IMDb's top 250. So I asked the members here on the channel, which one of those films most deserves to be in the IMDb top 250? And the results are actually not as close as I thought they might be. I'm not surprised that Oppenheimer won. It was the number one vote getter. 75 people said it most deserved its spot in the IMDb top 250 of Hollywood films made this decade. Dune Part 2 came in second with 48 votes, and I actually thought it might be closer between those two movies. But Oppenheimer really was the decisive winner here. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse was in third with 28 votes. The Wild Robot, I'm happy to see it did so well, was in a narrow fourth place with 27 votes. Top Gun Maverick came in with 20 votes. Project Hail Mary, people want to let time and history do its thing. It came in with 17 votes. And then The Father and Spider-Man No Way Home tied for last with 8 votes apiece. And that brings us to our Charts with Dan member poll question for this week. I'm going to ask you to be a box office prognosticator once again. A Minecraft movie, which came out this time last year, opened to $185.4 million in its first 5 days. That was a Friday through Tuesday opening last year. I want to know if you think the Super Mario Galaxy movie is going to beat that number in its first 5 days, which will start on Wednesday and go through Sunday. So $185.4 million is the number to beat. That falls within some box office projections. Some have it higher, some have it lower. So do you think that the Super Mario Galaxy movie is going to outdo what a Minecraft movie did in 5 days? You can vote right now in the member poll over on the community tab, and I will reveal the results as well as the actual box office numbers numbers on next week's Charts with Dan. And that also brings us to this week's Charts with Dan trivia question. It's kind of similar to last week's. With the Super Mario Galaxy movie opening, I want to know, what is the highest grossing non-Mario, non-DC film of all time with the word super in the title? So no Super Mario Brothers and no Superman. Other than those films, what's the highest grossing film of all time with the word super in the title? I'll give you a hint. It is the same film, both domestically and worldwide. Get ready, because here comes the answer, and it's actually Super 8, which is surprising to me because you don't really hear this movie talked about very often anymore, but it made $127 million domestically, $260 million worldwide. I remember being very excited by this film, the prospect of it, and then seeing it thinking like, oh yeah, okay, that's all right. But yeah, Super 8, the highest grossing non-Mario, non-DC film with the word super in the title. So we are almost at the end of March. There's just 2 days left in the month, and because I think next week's show is going to be packed with a lot of Mario stuff, I wanted to go ahead and look at how the box office is doing so far this year compared to last year and years past. The month of March in 2026 was a substantial improvement on March 2025. Box office this month domestically was actually about $200 million higher for the month in total than what we saw last year. This is the kind of recovery that the theater owners and the studio heads and everybody else have wanted to see for a very long time. So let's see what the cumulative box office for 2026 looks like so far. With a couple of days left in March, we're at $1.708 billion. That's just a little bit behind 2023's $1.722 billion for the best year so far post-pandemic. And once we add in those last 2 days of the month, I think we're going to be pretty close to 2023. We may be on track to having the best year post-pandemic by the time we get to April 1st. Right now, the 2026 box office is up $284.2 million from where we were in 2025. We were at plus $81 million back in February, at the end of February. So yeah, we're plus $200 million just for March, although I would not expect those results to be replicated because, as I mentioned, when we look at April, there are some movies that it appears are going to do well, but remember, April 2025 had both a Minecraft movie and Sinners. So it's going to be hard for us to match what we did in April 2025 with April 2026. And let's take a look at the theatrical market share chart for all tickets sold since January 1st. This is what it looked like at the end of February, with Disney leading the way, the indie studios in second place, and Sony in third place at 12.2%. I want you to look at Amazon. At the end of February, Amazon was next to last with a 6.3% share of all tickets sold since January 1st. Let's look at where we are right now. Disney's pretty much in the same place. They're in the lead, 27.8% of all tickets sold, or at least money from tickets sold this year, up a little bit from February. The indie studios are still in second place. These are your Markipliers, your A24s, etc. 20.1% of all tickets sold through the first 3 months of the year. That's pretty impressive. Look at Amazon MGM in third place now, 14.1% of all tickets sold. That's a 7.8% increase from February, and that is all Project Hail Mary. It has done very well, and it's moved Amazon MGM into third place among all studios. Paramount and Sony are tied at 9.9% each. Then we have Lionsgate at 6.7% market share. Warner Brothers currently at 6% market share. So Warner Brothers and Paramount, which are looking to merge, right now only combining for about 16% of all tickets sold, although neither have really aggressively started launching their slate. And right now, Universal at 5.5% is in last place among all studios. However, that is about to change in a big way because, of course, they are launching the Super Mario Galaxy movie this upcoming week. And so their slice of the pie is going to be much bigger the next time we look at this chart. All right, this is the 2026 annual domestic box office so far, and for the second week in a row, we have a new box office champion for the year, and it is Project Hail Mary at $164.3 million. It is the number one movie so far this year. That's up 4 spots from last week. It bumps Hoppers down to number 2, Scream 7 down to number 3, Goat to number 4. So we have 4 movies so far this year that have passed the $100 million domestic mark. Wuthering Heights is down to number 5. Send Help sticks there at number 6. Reminders of Him is up 2 spots to number 7. Iron Lung is down 1 spot to number 8. Crime 101 is down 1 spot to number 9. And Solo Mio is down to number 10. And we'll see how the Super Mario Galaxy movie does this upcoming weekend. If it really exceeds a lot of expectations, we could see a third week in a row where we have another new highest grossing movie of 2026. But Project Hail Mary has been doing very well. So I don't know if Mario is going to be able to do it in just 1 week. This is the annual domestic box office when you look at all tickets sold since January 1st, and Project Hail Mary is also number 1 on this list. It's up 6 spots from last week, and it dethrones Avatar: Fire and Ash, which was number 1 because it had so much carryover from the holiday season. Avatar: Fire and Ash is now number 2, followed by Hoppers, Scream 7, Goat, Zootopia 2, and Wuthering Heights. The Housemaid, Send Help, and Marty Supreme round out this top 10, and we should see, or we will see, the Super Mario Galaxy movie next week on this chart too. And this is the 2026 worldwide box office. Pegasus 3 remains the highest grossing film globally of the year at $630.3 million, the vast majority of that coming from the Chinese market. Project Hail Mary, now the second highest grossing movie of the year worldwide. It's up 7 spots from last week at $300.8 million, the highest grossing film released from Hollywood studios this year. Hoppers is down to number 3, just behind Project Hail Mary at $297.5 million. Then we have Wuthering Heights at $236.3 million, and Blades of the Guardians at just over $200 million. Scream 7 is just out of the top 5 right now. It's at $204 million. Then we have Scare Out from China. Goat is at number 8. Boonie Bears: The Hidden Protectors at number 9. And Dhurandhar: The Revenge, now on the worldwide box office top 10 at a reported $147.4 million. The King's Warden, now out of the top 10 for this year. So those are the numbers that I have for you as far as the box office goes. Let's take a look now at the world of streaming, and we'll start with the latest numbers from Netflix. This covers the week of March 16th through the 22nd. The newest numbers will be released tomorrow. I'm used to saying today because I usually do the show on Tuesdays. The new numbers will be released tomorrow, and the most watched program on Netflix for that week was Peaky Blinders: The Immortal Man, which brought in 25.32 million views. This is the Netflix movie version of the popular series starring Cillian Murphy, which ran several seasons. War Machine still doing well. It was in second place with just over 18 million views. The Netflix live event BTS, The Comeback Live, brought in 13 million views over its first few days. Then we have One Piece Season 2, which is in fourth place at 11.15 million views. It is good that it's in the top 5, but through 2 weeks, One Piece Season 2 has about 10 million fewer views than Season 1 had through 2 weeks. So I'm hoping that viewership picks up because I would like to see them continue that series past the Season 3 that they're currently planning. Virgin River Season 7 was in 5th place at 7.75 million views. Then we have the Netflix movie Made in Korea with 6.74 million views. Although that film is actually not made in Korea. It's a movie from India about an Indian woman in Seoul recovering from a heartbreak. At number 7, we have Louis Theroux's film Inside the Manosphere on the list for a second week at 6.27 million views. K-pop Demon Hunters back in the top 10, still in the top 10 at 5.4 million views. Then we have Tyler Perry's Beauty in Black Season 2 at 5.33 million views. And what was originally a Lifetime original movie a couple years ago, now streaming on Netflix, called Gaslit by My Husband, the Morgan Metzer story. You never really know what kind of audience you're going to find on Netflix. You go from Lifetime to a global audience. It brought in 5.25 million views. These are the top Netflix movie debuts this year. These are new films, not Hollywood films that make their streaming debut on Netflix. So these basically are Netflix original films. The Rip still has the best debut week of the year at 41.58 million views. War Machine close behind at 39.32 million views. Peaky Blinders: The Immortal Man had the third best debut for a new movie on Netflix this year at 25.32 million views, followed by Joe's College Road Trip and People We Meet on Vacation back in the first weekend of the year at 17.19 million views. And Peaky Blinders: The Immortal Man also had the third best debut of any program on Netflix in 2026. Again, this would be a new movie or new series. The top 4 is actually the same, and His and Hers rounds out the top 5 with 19.88 million views, also on the first weekend of the year. And this is a look at the best weeks for all movies on Netflix so far this year. The Rip had the best debut week, but War Machine has actually had the highest total viewership over the course of a week of any movie so far this year on Netflix, with 44.38 million views in its second week. Then we have the debut of The Rip at 41.58 million views, the second week of The Rip at 40.41 million views, then the first week of War Machine at 39.32 million views, but Peaky Blinders: The Immortal Man still able to round out the top 5 with 25.32 million views over its first few days of release. And these are the 10 most watched programs on Netflix in 2026. War Machine is gunning for that number 1 spot. It's up to number 2. It's the second Netflix program when we look at available viewing data to break 100 million views, and it's only about 13 million views behind The Rip. His and Hers gets bumped down to 3rd. Bridgerton Season 4 is down to number 4. K-Pop Demon Hunter still rounding out the top 5. Then we have People We Meet on Vacation. One Piece Season 2 is one of the 10 most viewed programs on Netflix this year with its 27.96 million views. So that's good news, although it is substantially behind the other 6 that are on this chart. The Netflix movie Fire Breaks at number 8. The Night Agent Season 3 is down to number 9. The Lincoln Lawyer Season 4 is down to number 10. And Joe's College Road Trip is now out of the overall top 10 for this year. So those are the latest numbers from Netflix. Now let's take a look at the latest from Nielsen. Now, unlike the Netflix numbers we just looked at, these are domestic numbers only. They're not global, and they're delayed by about a month because that's how Nielsen runs their ship. So this is for the week of February 23rd to March 1st. And these are the most watched movies that week. At number 1 is Jurassic World Rebirth, which made its Netflix debut and brought in 11.8 million hours of watch time in the US. Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning also made the transition to Netflix and brought in 4.75 million hours watched. Then we have the Amazon film The Bluff at 4.63 million hours watched. Firebreak on Netflix brought in nearly 4 million hours of watch time. K-Pop Demon Hunters in the top 5 here in the United States, still back in late February at 3.6 million hours watched. Then we have the 2019 animated Addams Family film at number 6. Expendables at number 7. The Addams Family 2, again, the sequel to the animated film, at number 8. Predator Badlands at number 9. And Joe's College Road Trip dropping from, I believe, number 1 to number 10. And these are the best weekly performances for streaming movies here in the US. Now, these can be original or really any movie on a streaming service. Through late February, The Rip has the 2 best performances for any movie on streaming this year domestically, with 23.2 million hours of watch time in its first week of release and a nearly identical 22.9 million hours of watch time in its second week. And we'll see where War Machine falls on this list here in a week or two. The Wrecking Crew on Amazon brought in 21 million hours of watch time. That was its debut week on the streaming service. Then we have Joe's College Road Trip at 14.15 million hours of watch time, and Jurassic World Rebirth, actually the 5th best performance of any movie on streaming here in the US through late February, with 11.8 million hours of watch time. These are the most watched streaming shows for February 23rd to March 1st. At number 1 is Bridgerton. This was the debut week of its second batch of episodes for season 4, and the series brought in 56.15 million hours of total watch time. Now, keep in mind, this is across all seasons, not just the 4th season. The Night Agent coming in second place at 35.9 million hours watched. The Pit remaining very popular at 17.75 million hours watched. Then we have Love is Blind at number 4. Paradise returned to Hulu in late February. It brought in 15.58 million hours of watch time. The Traitors returning to the top 10 at number 6 as it wrapped up its latest season. The Big Bang Theory's at number 7. Bluey's at number 8. Grey's Anatomy's at number 9. And The Lincoln Lawyer is at number 10. And as you can see here, Bridgerton's watch time for that week of February 23rd was the most watch time for any series so far this year in 2026. 56.15 million hours. That tops what Stranger Things saw on the first week of the year, starting January 5th, which brought in 53.35 million hours of watch time across all seasons. Then we have Bridgerton back in January when the first batch of episodes for season 4 dropped at 50.5 million hours of watch time. The Lincoln Lawyer comes in 4th on the week that its new season debuted at 42.38 million hours watched. And His and Hers comes in with 37.4 million hours watched back in January. These are the top shows as far as watch time per available episode. So you take the total watch time divided by the number of episodes you can watch. That's how we get this number. Bridgerton leads the way with 1.75 million hours of watch time for each of its 32 episodes. Again, this is an average number. Paradise comes in second place at 1.32 million hours per episode. The Night Agent also above a million at 1.2 million hours of watch time per episode. Then we have The Pit at 770,000. The Hunting Party, which is doing very well on streaming, it's also a broadcast show, comes in just under 600,000 hours per episode. Then we have Cross on Amazon at 446,000 hours per episode. The Lincoln Lawyer at number 7. The Traitors at number 8. Stranger Things still hanging around at number 9. And Love is Blind rounding out the top 10. And those are all the numbers I have for you this week. Before we go, though, I just wanted to give you a heads up on some stuff you might be interested in watching, both at home and in theaters. First of all, tomorrow on Tuesday, The Testament of Ann Lee will be making its streaming debut on Hulu, and 28 years later, The Bone Temple, if you missed it in theaters and box office numbers say that you probably did, will be debuting on Netflix, and I quite enjoyed 28 years later, The Bone Temple. Then on Wednesday, keep in mind, if you're a Mario fan, the Super Mario Galaxy movie opens on Wednesday, ahead of the Easter weekend. From what I could see in my local theater, I do not believe they're doing Tuesday night previews, so Wednesday is the first day you can see that. Also playing on Wednesday is the classic Charlton Heston film Ben-Hur. It's actually already been in theaters over the weekend, but you can check it out on Wednesday and also on Thursday if you want to see it on the big screen. Crime 101 will be moving from the big screen to Amazon Prime on Wednesday, and The Housemaid will be making its debut on Starz as it begins its pay TV/streaming journey. On Thursday, Season 3 of the Netflix series XO Kitty will drop. You can catch all 8 episodes on Thursday. Then on Friday, another buzzy movie from A24, The Drama, will be hitting theaters in wide release. Robert Pattinson and Zendaya play a couple about to get married when their wedding is rocked by a shocking revelation. I am still interested in seeing this film despite some actual shocking revelations I read this week about the director of the movie. Yikes. A Great Awakening will also be playing in theaters around the country. This is a religious historical drama about the friendship between Benjamin Franklin and Reverend George Whitefield. We often will see a kind of religiously themed movie in theaters for Easter weekend. Debuting Friday on Apple TV Plus is Season 2 of the John Hamm series, Your Friends and Neighbors. So if you like Season 1, you can check out Season 2 this weekend, or at least start checking out Season 2. There's a new Hulu original film being released on Friday called Pizza Movie. It stars Gaten Matarazzo from Stranger Things and Sean Giambrone as 2 college kids on a bad drug trip that can only be cured by pizza. This film is from Brian McElhaney and Nick Coker, who are also known as the sketch comedy duo Britannic. Also, if you missed Five Nights at Freddy's 2 in theaters last year, it will be making its debut on Peacock for streaming viewers, for subscribers to that streaming service, so you can check that out. On Saturday on Netflix, you can check out Merrily We Roll Along, which, stay with me here, is the filmed version of the 2023 off-Broadway revival of Stephen Sondheim's 1981 musical adaptation of the 1934 play, starring Daniel Radcliffe, Jonathan Groff, and Lindsay Mendez. Richard Linklater is actually shooting a film version of Merrily We Roll Along right now with Paul Mescal, Ben Platt, and Beanie Feldstein that began production in 2019 and will be shot over 20 years. So look for it in 2040 or so. Hopefully I'm still here giving you box office numbers. And then next Monday, because the show may be on Tuesday again next week, so I want to make sure I note this, the new Star Wars animated series, Star Wars Maul Shadow Lord, will debut on Disney+. You'll be able to catch the first 2 episodes, and then they will release weekly, leading up to, of course, May the 4th. And that's everything I've got for you this week. Be sure to stay tuned right here to the channel. As I mentioned, I will have my review of the Super Mario Galaxy movie out for you tomorrow, so you can check out what I think ahead of the movie's release on Wednesday. I also really do want to check out the drama because the trailers for it have me intrigued, and it's a pretty good cast. So I want to see what's going on with that film. Plus, you never really know what's going to happen here on the channel. Stay tuned for details about my live show. It may move around the schedule a little bit this week as I kind of shift what's going on with what I do. And you never know what's going to happen on any given week. If there's breaking news or anything else I find interesting, you'll find it right here on the channel. If this is your first time watching, welcome. Please consider subscribing. Hit that bell so you're notified when I upload a new video. But most of all, thank you for watching this video. Until next time, stay safe, and I'll see you then. Bye.